Now, let me begin by telling you something I learned a long time ago. Something that changed the entire direction of my life. Success, my friends, is not something you chase. If you chase it, it runs. If you pursue it, it hides. Success is not a rabbit, and life is not a field where you spend your days running in circles hoping luck and opportunity will fall into your hands. No, no. Success is something you attract by the person you become. That was one of the great revelations of my early years. And when it finally sank in, I stopped asking, where's the opportunity, and started asking, what kind of person must I become for opportunity to find me? You see, most people are out there chasing applause, chasing recognition, chasing the results they haven't yet earned, but they forget the first rule of the game. Life does not pay you for needing something, it pays you for becoming someone. And the journey of becoming doesn't begin with grand gestures or dramatic turnarounds. No, it begins with something much smaller, so small, in fact, that you could miss it if you're not careful. It begins with tiny habits, quiet disciplines, the little things you do daily that don't seem to matter in the moment, but matter a great deal over time. Tonight, I want to talk to you about those tiny things because they're the ones that change everything. Not the big cinematic decisions we like to post about online, but the small, invisible disciplines that shape your philosophy and determine your destiny. A lot of people are waiting for a breakthrough, waiting for a miracle, waiting for a sudden burst of motivation. But success doesn't respond to wishful thinking. It responds to character, to consistency, to the kind of person who shows up day after day doing the small things that quietly build value. And here's the good news. You don't need a new job, a new city, a new wardrobe, or a new bank account to begin. You don't even need more time. All you need is a willingness to change the little things, the small habits that put you on the path where success can finally find you. Because when you improve you, everything else improves with you. And the moment you begin to strengthen your habits, you begin to strengthen your future. So let me give you a promise. If you practice these tiny habits consistently, just a few minutes a day, you will become more attractive to opportunity, to confidence, to influence, to success itself. Not because you're chasing it, but because you're building the kind of character it's naturally drawn to. Let's begin. Now let's take a moment and dig into something fundamental, something that sits at the very center of everything we're talking about tonight. I call it the law of personal attraction. And no, I'm not talking about magic or mystery or some hidden cosmic force that sprinkles success on a chosen few. I'm talking about a simple, practical truth that governs the world of achievement. You don't get what you want, you get what you are. That principle changed my life. Because for years, I walked around wishing success would show up and give me a break. I wanted good fortune, I wanted good opportunities, I wanted good results. But here was the problem. Wanting is not enough. You can want all day long. You can wish with all your heart. But life doesn't respond to your wants. It responds to your value. It responds to your discipline. It responds to your character. You've heard me say it before. You don't get paid for the hour. You get paid for the value you bring to the hour. And the truth is, success works the same way. You don't attract success with hope. You attract it with value. You attract it with preparation. You attract it with better habits, better decisions, and a better philosophy guiding your daily life. Success doesn't knock on the door of the person who merely waits. It visits the person who becomes worthy of the visit. Think of it like this. Success is looking for a good place to stay. And it's picky. It's not coming to a cluttered mind, a confused life, or an undisciplined routine. It's not showing up in a home where excuses sit on every shelf and bad habits cover the floor. But give success a place where discipline lives, where learning happens, where small improvements are made every day, and it will walk right in, sit down, and stay a while. Your habits are the invitations you send to your future. Your discipline is the welcome mat. Your character is the foundation that holds everything up. And the stronger these are, the more success feels right at home in your life. Let me give you a metaphor. The same sun that melts the butter hardens the clay. It's not the sun, it's the substance. Some people complain that life is too harsh, too unfair, too challenging. But life is the same for all of us. The question is not about the conditions, it's about what you're made of. And what you're made of is shaped every day by the little decisions you make, the tiny habits you repeat, the invisible disciplines you choose or ignore. So before we jump into the 5 habits, understand this. These habits are not about impressing the world, they're about improving you. They're not about chasing success, they're about becoming the kind of person success is drawn to. Once you grasp this, everything changes. You stop looking outward for what's missing and begin building inward what's required. Success follows identity. Change the identity, and success can't help but follow. Now that you understand the principle, let's begin with the first tiny habit, the one that starts reshaping your philosophy from the inside out. Now let me give you the first tiny habit, small enough to overlook, powerful enough to change the entire direction of your life. I call it the value per hour check. And it begins with a simple question you ask yourself at the end of every single day. How did I become more valuable today? That's it. One question. But don't let its simplicity fool you, because hidden inside that question is the seed of wealth, the foundation of advancement, the blueprint for becoming someone success can't ignore. You see, most people finish their day asking questions like, what did I get done? Or did I survive? Or did I check off my list? Those are fine questions, but they won't build your future. The question that builds your future is the one that builds you. Value is the great differentiator. Value is what separates the ordinary from the remarkable. Value is what elevates a person from unnoticed to indispensable. And value doesn't grow by accident. It grows by intention, by attention, by being honest enough to sit down at the end of the day and say, what did I do today that makes me more valuable than I was yesterday? Most people never ask that question. They're too busy, too tired, too distracted. They go to bed the same way they woke up, having repeated another day of a life they're not happy with. But the ones who grow, the ones who rise, the ones who separate from the pack, they practice this tiny daily discipline of reflection, and it keeps them on the path of becoming somebody the marketplace rewards. Let me remind you of something important. You don't get paid for your time, you get paid for the value you bring to the time. Someone can work an hour and earn minimum wage. Someone else can work an hour and earn a fortune. The difference isn't the clock, the difference is the person. And every evening when you sit with that simple question, you take responsibility for that difference. So how do you increase your value? Sometimes it's a skill. Sometimes it's an idea. Sometimes it's a better attitude. Sometimes it's learning something new, refining what you already know, or practicing something you've been neglecting. Sometimes it's as small as becoming a little more reliable, a little more organized, a little more prepared. Each small improvement raises your stock first in your eyes, then in the eyes of everyone around you. And here's the magic. The habit doesn't take an hour. It doesn't even take 5 minutes. In 60 seconds, you can redirect the course of your entire life simply by acknowledging where you improved and where you need to improve next. This tiny habit keeps you from drifting, from coasting, from living the same year over and over again. It invites you to grow deliberately, intentionally, daily. Success responds to people who grow. Opportunity responds to people who evolve. And this little evening question ensures that every day contributes something to the person you're becoming. Because if you increase you, life will increase what it gives you. So tonight, before the day ends, take a moment, just a moment, and ask yourself that powerful question. Write down your answer. Visit that quiet space within and say, today, how did I become more valuable? If you do it daily, habitually, without fail, something extraordinary will begin to happen. Success will start noticing you. Now that we've built the foundation with this first habit, let's move on to the second one. It's simple, quick, and incredibly powerful. Now let's move to the second tiny habit, one that has shaped fortunes, built leaders, and rescued countless lives from the quiet trap of mediocrity. And it's so simple, so small, that most people wave it off as insignificant. But let me tell you, this one habit, practiced daily, can turn an ordinary person into an extraordinary thinker. We call it the 10-minute reading rule. 10 minutes. Not an hour, not a chapter, not a book a week, just 10 minutes. But let me tell you something. 10 minutes of the right reading done every day is enough to change the course of your entire philosophy. Jim Rohn used to say, miss a meal if you have to, but don't miss your reading. Because reading isn't just about acquiring information, it's about nourishing your mind expanding your thinking, protecting your philosophy, and sharpening the saw of your future. The mind is a miracle, but it's also a sponge. If you don't fill it with good ideas, it will fill itself with bad ones. If you don't give it direction, it will drift. And a drifting mind is a dangerous thing. Drifting minds make drifting lives. But when you read good books, even for 10 minutes, you take control of the steering wheel. You start shaping your thoughts instead of letting the world shape them for you. Let me put it another way. Reading is how you borrow someone else's decades of experience for the cost of minutes. You can learn in 10 minutes what took someone 10 years to discover. That is leverage. That is efficiency. That is wisdom. Now, what should you read? Well, read the books that build you. Read the books that sharpen your ambition. Read the books that teach you about money, discipline, leadership, communication, and human behavior. Read the biographies of great men and women. Read the thinkers who challenge your assumptions. Read ideas that stretch the boundaries of your current philosophy. And here's the beautiful part. You don't need to read until your eyes blur. Just 10 minutes a day. Why 10? Because 10 minutes is enough to keep you growing, enough to strengthen your mind, enough to keep you connected to a stream of wisdom greater than your own. And 10 minutes is so small that even on the busiest, most chaotic day, you can still manage it. 10 minutes is consistency disguised as simplicity. And here's what happens over time. 10 minutes becomes a chapter. A chapter becomes a book. A book becomes a habit. And the habit becomes a new mind. And once your mind expands, it never shrinks back to its former size. You begin to think better. You begin to speak better. You begin to make better decisions. And life responds to better decisions with better results. Now, I want you to hear this carefully. Formal education will make you a living. Self-education will make you a fortune. The world will reward you for the value you produce, and reading is one of the quickest ways to increase your value. Someone asks you, what's the big deal about 10 minutes? Tell them, 10 minutes is how I upgrade my future a day at a time. So tonight, before you go to bed, open a book, any book that builds you, read 10 minutes, and when you do it again tomorrow, and the next day, and the next, you will discover something remarkable. These small, quiet minutes are turning into an enormous transformation. Now that we've strengthened your mind with the second habit, let's move to the third one. This one shapes the people around you. And believe me, that shapes your destiny. Now let's move on to the third tiny habit, one of the most important ones you will ever learn. And if you truly grasp this, it will change the entire atmosphere of your life. I call it the association audit. And you don't have to do it every day. Once a week is enough. But let me tell you something. This one habit can alter your destiny more quickly than almost anything else. Because everything you are and everything you will become is influenced by the people you give your time to. You've heard me say it 1,000 times. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And that statement is not poetic, it's mathematical. If you take the mindset, the habits, the attitude, the language, the standards, even the income of the 5 people closest to you, and you average them out, it will look a lot like you. Not because you copied them, but because proximity is power. Association is influence. People rub off on you the good and the bad. Some people lift you. Some people drain you. Some people sharpen you. Some people dull you. Some people inspire ambition. Others reinforce excuses. And if you never take the time to examine those influences, you will unknowingly become a product of an environment you never selected. So here's the habit. Once a week, sit down with yourself and review your associations. Not to judge anybody, not to condemn anybody, but to protect your future. Ask yourself a few honest questions. Who did I spend the most time with this week? Did they raise my standards or lower them? Did they encourage my excuses or challenge them? Did they fuel my ambition or drain my energy? Did I grow because of them or shrink around them? It only takes a few minutes, but it forces you to be conscious of something most people let slip by unconsciously. And let me give you a truth you must write down. You cannot outgrow the environment that is holding you down. You can read all the books, listen to all the lectures, write down all the goals, but if your closest associations are committed to comfort while you are committed to growth, sooner or later, someone is going to change. And it won't be them. Now, you don't have to cut everybody out of your life. That's not the message. Jim Rohn never said abandon people. He said evaluate people. Sort your associations into 3 categories. 1, disassociate from the harmful. Anyone who poisons your attitude, who thrives on negativity, who constantly pulls you backward, those are the people you must gently but firmly release from your inner circle. You don't have to hate them. Just don't hand them the steering wheel of your life. 2, limit the neutral. Some people aren't bad, they just aren't good for your growth. They're comfortable, casual, predictable, no ambition, no fire, no hunger. These people don't require removal. They require boundaries. Give them less time, less influence, less access. 3, expand the positive. These are the people who challenge you, inspire you, make you think bigger. People with energy, discipline, and standards. When you leave a conversation with them, you feel like you could conquer the world. These are the people you must bring closer. Because remember, you can't soar with the eagles if you keep scratching with the chickens. And let me give you one more thought, one of the most important of your entire life. Your direction is determined long before you take the first step. It's determined by the people walking beside you. Choose carefully. Review weekly. Because associations quietly craft your identity, and your identity determines your destiny. Now that we've examined your environment and strengthened your circle, let's move to the 4th tiny habit, one that builds the inner strength you need to trust yourself. Now let me introduce you to one of the most powerful habits in the entire world of personal development. It's small, it's quiet, it's private, and yet it determines more about your future than almost anything else. I call it the promise keeper habit. And it begins with a question I want you to remember for the rest of your life. If you can't trust yourself, who can you trust? You see, we all want confidence. We all want discipline. We all want fire, ambition, momentum. But confidence doesn't come from compliments. It doesn't come from applause. It doesn't come from other people telling you how great you are. Confidence comes from keeping your word to yourself. That's where it begins. That's where it grows. That's where it becomes unshakable. Every day, you wake up with 2 voices inside you. One says, let's do it. The other says, let's rest a little longer. One says, keep your promise. The other says, no one will know the difference. One says, rise to your potential. The other says, settle for your comfort. And the winner every day is determined by the promises you keep or break. So here's the habit. Every morning, make one small promise to yourself, and every night, make sure you kept it. It doesn't have to be big. In fact, it shouldn't be big. The secret is to start small, so small you can't talk yourself out of it. Maybe your promise is, I'll wake up at this time. I'll read my 10 minutes. I'll drink more water. I'll write 1 paragraph. I'll take a 5-minute walk. I'll finish 1 task I've been avoiding. Just 1 promise a day, 1 act of integrity, 1 moment where your actions match your intentions. And let me tell you what happens when you do this. Slowly, quietly, almost invisibly, you begin to trust yourself again. You begin to see yourself as someone who follows through, someone who finishes, someone who does what they say they will do. And that identity is worth more than gold. The greatest damage you'll ever do to your potential is not the mistakes you make publicly, it's the private promises you break quietly. Because every broken promise is a vote cast for doubt. See? Your mind says, we don't follow through. And doubt becomes hesitation, and hesitation becomes procrastination, and procrastination becomes a lifestyle. And that lifestyle becomes a destiny you never intended. But the opposite is also true. Every promise you keep becomes a vote for confidence. See, your mind says, we follow through, and confidence becomes action, and action becomes momentum, and momentum becomes progress, and progress becomes pride, and pride becomes a new destiny, one you built deliberately. You see, self-respect is not built in the spotlight. It's built in the quiet corners of your life when you keep your word even though no one else is watching. That's where your identity forms. That's where your future is shaped. That's where discipline is born. And here's the good news. You don't need perfection. You only need consistency. Make 1 small promise. Keep 1 small promise every single day. If you do that, day after day, habit after habit, week after week, you will begin to feel something extraordinary, the growing strength of a person who trusts themselves. And once you trust yourself, success will start trusting you too. Because success doesn't follow the talented, it follows the trustworthy. Now that you've learned how to strengthen your identity with this fourth habit, let's move on to the fifth, and this one will sharpen your foresight and prevent you from drifting away from the future you intend to build. Now let's move to the fifth and final tiny habit, one of the most revealing, the most sobering, and the most transformative habits you will ever practice. It takes less than a minute, but it will change the direction of your days, your months, and ultimately, your life. I call it the nightly reflection question, and it's this. If I lived today every day for the next 5 years, where would I end up? That question, my friends, is the great clarifier. It cuts through excuses, noise, and wishful thinking like a razor. Because the truth is, your future is not created by occasional bursts of effort. It is created by your daily routines, what you repeatedly do, think, and become. And this tiny habit forces you to look at your day with honest eyes and ask, is this the direction I truly want my life to go? Most people never ask that question. They don't reflect, they don't measure, they don't evaluate, and because they don't evaluate, they drift. They repeat the same unproductive habits, the same moods, the same excuses, day after day, week after week, year after year. And without ever deciding, they end up living a life they never truly chose. Let me tell you something. Drifting is the slowest form of failure. You don't crash in a day. You don't collapse in a week. You drift quietly, comfortably, until one day you look around and wonder, how did I end up here? But with this tiny nightly habit, drifting becomes impossible. Why? Because you check the compass every evening. You look at the course. You measure the direction. You take responsibility. You ask yourself, did I move closer to my goals today? Did I move farther away? Did I practice the habits of the person I want to become? Did I live today intentionally or accidentally? Do I need to correct my course tomorrow? And suddenly your days are no longer random. They're strategic. They're meaningful. They're tools in your hand rather than waves pushing you around. Remember this. You don't get from the year what you want. You get from the year what you built, one day at a time. And the nightly reflection question is how you ensure the days are building something worthwhile. Let me give you a metaphor. A ship that is off course by just 1 degree doesn't look lost today. It doesn't even look lost tomorrow. But give it a few months on the same trajectory, and that ship ends up hundreds of miles from its intended destination. That's what happens to a life without reflection. And that's why this tiny question is the lighthouse that brings you back to the path. Here's the beauty of it. If you lived a great day, this question multiplies your pride. If you lived a mediocre day, it gives you clarity. If you lived a poor day, it gives you a chance to course correct tomorrow. And that, my friends, is the power of intention. Most people don't fail from a lack of talent, they fail from a lack of awareness. The nightly reflection question restores that awareness. It transforms your days into data. It turns experiences into wisdom. It builds a future you can trust. Remember Jim Rohn's line, don't just go through the day, get from the day. This habit ensures you extract the lesson, the insight, the truth from each day before it ends. And let me give you one final note about this habit. It protects your dreams. It guards your direction. It keeps your goals alive. It ensures the person you're becoming is aligned with the future you want. Because here's the greatest truth about your destiny. Your future is built at night, not in the morning. It's built in the quiet moment when you ask yourself, is this the life I truly want to multiply? Now that we've completed the 5 tiny habits, let's bring them together and see how they integrate, how they combine to turn an ordinary person into someone success can't ignore. Now that we've walked through the 5 tiny habits, each one simple, each one small, each one easy to overlook, I want to show you what happens when you put them all together. Because individually, these habits are powerful. But together they form a force that can reshape your entire life. When these habits integrate, They create something I like to call personal magnetism, a quiet power that draws opportunity, trust, respect, and success toward you almost automatically. Let's tie them together. Think about the first habit, the value per hour check. Every night, you ask yourself, how did I become more valuable today? That one question doesn't just measure your progress, it directs it. It turns you into someone who grows daily, deliberately. And growth, my friends, is magnetic. People notice it. The marketplace rewards it. Life responds to it. Then we add the second habit, 10 minutes of reading. 10 minutes may not seem like much, but 10 minutes a day shapes your philosophy. It expands your knowledge. It upgrades your thinking. And success always begins in the mind long before it shows up in the bank account. The books you read become the thoughts you think. The thoughts you think become the actions you take. The actions you take become the habits you form, and those habits become your identity. Soon enough, people start looking at you and saying, there's something different about this person. Then comes the third habit, the association audit. This one changes your environment. You begin to surround yourself with people who breathe ambition, who refuse excuses, who push you higher simply by who they are. And let me tell you, when you raise the quality of your associations, you raise the quality of your life. You start speaking differently, thinking differently, expecting more of yourself. You rise because you're surrounded by people who won't let you settle. Next is the fourth habit, the promise keeper habit. Now, this one is sacred because it builds something few people ever truly achieve. Self-trust. When you keep your promises to yourself, you walk differently. You talk differently. You carry an inner strength, a quiet confidence that others can sense. You begin to rely on yourself. And when you trust you, others will trust you too. Integrity is magnetic. Discipline is magnetic. Consistency is magnetic. And the people who possess these qualities don't need to shout. They simply live, and the world pays attention. And finally, the fifth habit, the nightly reflection question. This one stops you from drifting. It keeps your compass pointed toward the life you want to live. It ensures that every day, even the small ones, count for something. And when you live a life of intentional days, intentional habits, intentional decisions, you become someone who is impossible to ignore. The world loves people who know where they're going. Leaders follow clarity. Opportunities follow direction. Success follows intention. Now imagine all 5 habits integrated. You're growing daily. You're reading daily. You're choosing your associations weekly. You're keeping your promises consistently. You're reflecting honestly every night. What do you think happens to someone who lives like this for 30 days? For 90 days? For a year? I'll tell you, success starts looking for them. You don't have to chase it, it finds you. Because you've become the kind of person it is naturally drawn to. You've built character. You've built discipline. You've built clarity. And clarity combined with character creates magnetism. Let me give you something worth remembering. People don't follow titles, they follow energy. They follow consistency. They follow someone who clearly works harder on themselves than on their job. They follow someone who has grown roots, deep roots. These tiny habits create those roots. You see, the world is full of people who talk big and deliver small. But the person who practices these tiny habits, they deliver. Quietly, consistently, repeatedly. And sooner or later, people begin to say, whatever you're doing, it's working. Because the results begin to show in your confidence, your decisions, your opportunities, your finances, your relationships, your future. This is personal magnetism. Not the loud kind, not the flashy kind, but the steady, strong, grounded kind, the kind that holds up under pressure and shines without needing attention. When these habits integrate, success doesn't feel like luck anymore. It feels like a natural result of who you've become. Now that we've integrated the system, let's bring everything home. Let's close this lesson the way Jim Rohn would, by reminding you why all of this matters and what kind of life awaits you when you begin leading yourself first. Now, as we bring this entire lesson to a close, I want you to pause for a moment and imagine something simple but profound. What kind of life could unfold if you became the kind of person success couldn't ignore? Not the person who chases, begs, waits, or hopes, but the person who attracts the results they desire because of who they are becoming every day. You see, all of this, every habit, every question, every reflection, comes down to one central idea. Work harder on yourself than you do on your job. Because your job will earn you a living, but you, the person you are becoming, will earn you a fortune. And fortune doesn't just mean money. Fortune is confidence. Fortune is clarity. Fortune is leadership. Fortune is peace of mind. Fortune is influence. Fortune is the ability to direct your life instead of being pushed around by circumstances. These 5 tiny habits, practiced daily and weekly, begin to carve out a version of you that stands taller, thinks clearer, acts wiser, and lives more intentionally. A person who wakes up with direction, who reads with purpose, who evaluates their circle, who keeps their word, who reflects on their path. And when you become that person, success starts showing up not because you wished for it, but because you prepared for it. Remember this, success doesn't respond to need, it responds to deserve. And deserve is not built in the grand moments of life, it's built in the small, quiet disciplines you practice every single day. The habits that no one applauds, the decisions no one sees, the promises no one hears you make. That's where leadership begins. That's where transformation starts. That's where attraction grows. And here's the beautiful truth. You don't need to change everything in your life tonight. You just need to begin one small habit, one small promise, one tiny improvement. And when you string those improvements together, day after day, something remarkable happens. You begin walking in the direction of discipline, of purpose, of self-leadership. And success, sooner or later, will follow you, not by accident, not by luck, but by design. So let this be your invitation. Lead yourself first. Lead yourself with clarity. Lead yourself with discipline. Lead yourself with intention. And the world will respond. Opportunities will respond. People will respond. Because people are drawn not to perfection, but to growth, to consistency, to someone who lives by their philosophy and honors their commitments. My friends, you already have the seeds of greatness inside you. These habits simply water the soil. Practice them with seriousness, with consistency, with determination. And one day you'll look around and say, it happened. I became the person I always hoped I could be. And when you do that, success will not be something you chase. It will be something that quietly, inevitably, faithfully follows you. Thank you. Now go build the person that your future is waiting to reward.